Well, I'm not a scientist, so I don't have a computer. And I know time is of the essence. I want to say, first of all, as Roger's second wife and someone who knew nothing about any of the things that you have talked about today, although I'm a scientist's daughter, but that's another story. Thank you so much for coming together to speak of this extraordinary man who I met in Trafalgar Square at a rally for Wales. I was just a celebrity speaker, but 10 weeks later I got married to him, and I only saw him for 2 weeks separately between the time I met him and the time I married him. And when I arrived at Boston Airport with my little 8-year-old son from another chap in tow to come to this amazing place that he introduced me to in Vermont with a stone circle, where wouldn't an actress who loved Shakespeare and a man who discovered music in the oceans choose to get married? Anyway, we did. And but as I was checking in through the customs, this guy who was in charge of, American, he said, "Who are you?" He said, "Why are you coming to the United States?" And I said, "Oh, I'm coming to get married." And he said, "Who are you going to marry?" I said, "Oh, I don't think that's any of your business." And he said, "No, who are you marrying?" So I said, "Well, I'm marrying someone called Roger Payne." "Roger Payne," he said. "He taught me introductory biology at Tufts. Welcome." I thought, my God, this man is really well connected. And he is. Now, I could fill you with stories about Roger's, because I'm an actor, love of the theatre, which I didn't know he had, but he developed it amazingly fast. I mean, he, within a very few months of our being married, he wrote a play called The Actress and the Sailor. We were living in London at the time, and I'm an ex-RSC, a Royal Shakespeare Company actor, and I'd done a huge amount of stuff. And this man, who I thought was going to work with Wales, writes a script called The Actress and the Sailor. And it was all about our life together. It was him and me and my son and the nanny and my sister, who lived just down the road. And I said, "Roger, I'm an actor. I don't play myself." And it was, he was quoting our lives. It was ridiculous. So that got put on the shelf. I only found it the other day. But there was another dream he had, which was that we would, because we were always being separated by work and stuff, well, he started coming to the theatre and seeing every performance I gave every night. And that made me very angry, because you're not supposed to do that. That's frightfully kind of, over the top. But then I discovered, when he didn't come, my fellow actors were heartbroken, because Roger was able to communicate with actors just as well as he could communicate with young scientists. He had an ability to see something and go, "This is what you want. Here's the secret. This is what we shall do. And this is how it could be better." And he transformed the lives of so many actors over the years that we've been together around the world in all kinds of fields. And because he came in the theatre to see every performance that I gave, he was able to watch them, and then he decided, "Oh, I know what I'm going to do." I realized that when the audience is good, then the play is better, because, of course, we're organisms, we're actors. We're not behind a glass wall. We are animals, and we respond to the way animals respond to us. It's all about whales communicating with whales, right? Well, actors communicate with their fellow species. And so he devised this idea that we were going to have this fantastic audience company, club. And when all the best people in that, who were best audience members, all got together, you'd see the best show of a play ever. Well, that didn't come to it. It's like so many of his wonderful ideas. The other idea he had was that we would get a boat, and we'd sail around the world with a little company of actors, mostly 2 or 3, and he would do his whale research, and wherever we stopped, I would put on a play on the boat. And I said, "No, that's not a good idea. I don't think so." So he was a man of great imagination, enormous love of life, and also incredible wisdom. And I want to tell you how he died, because to me this was the greatest act of revolution and courage than anyone I've ever known did. In Vermont, where we live, you have the choice to sign an agreement with the government called, for sake of a better expression, a medically assisted suicide. I think they should change that name. But he did decide to do this, and there was a huge amount of discussion about it. But he's a scientist. He's also a realist. And he knew he had less than 6 months to live. He had a very bad cancer, and there was no cure. So I'm also a practical atheist like him, and I saw that this was, of course, the right way to go, because he hated being in hospital, and that was a very serious alternative, and that would have killed him. So he signed this agreement, and it involves 2 doctors making a decision, and then we put it on the shelf. And on a Wednesday, Sandy, one of Sam's wife, and I and a hospice nurse were sitting talking to him, as we did, because he had his in the hospital bed where he was. And he suddenly reached to Sandy and said, "I think I'm going to take that medicine on Wednesday. On Friday, because this was Wednesday." And I said, "What medicine, darling?" And he said, "Well, the medicine, so that I can end my life." And we all took a big breath, and I said, "Well, darling Roger, we haven't even got the medicine in the house yet, because it's delivered by one pharmacist in Vermont." So we had a long chat about it, and we decided, okay. So I rang up the people involved, and this very charming guy called Smiling Steve, John was there, came and explained very gently, beautifully, the process. You're given 3 pills at a certain time to stop the nausea, and then half an hour later, you're given a liquid, you drink it, and then that happens. So it was decided that it was going to happen on Saturday, the 10th of June. So we let everybody know. And he started ringing up people and telling them what he was doing. It was extraordinary, because in all of this, there was no tension, no sense of darkness, no fear. There was just this incredible, buoyant, humid, loving, gentle, as John says, openness to the fact that in the end, life includes death. That's how it is. So on the Saturday, the family came. They were all there, and some other friends. And Holly bought the most beautiful shroud that Katie had made, with beautiful humpbacks painted on it. And we sang songs, and the phone kept ringing. Laura's ex-partner, Daniel, called from Alaska, and Roger started saying, "You shouldn't be living in Alaska. You should go and live. You should go and live in New Zealand. Remember that?" And I thought, "What's he talking about?" And Carl called, and all kinds of people called, and he was having these conversations, and we were singing, and it was an amazingly joyous, extraordinary, but painful, but somehow beautiful time, wasn't it? And then the time came, and we had this amazing doctor, his GP, who was wonderful. And so he took his pills, and then he started talking about hummingbirds. Remember that? And whether or not they could make aeroplanes with the kind of motion that hummingbird wings had. I mean, it was just, you thought, wow, the brain was still going. And then he took half an hour later, he was given this potion to drink. And you can only drink it if you are of a sound mind and able to drink it yourself. No one can give it to you. And then I was sitting next to him, and he turned to me after about a few minutes, and he looked at me, and he said, "What was the third?" And his eyes closed, and he was gone. And my son who was there, Tim, his stepson, who adored Roger, said, "Mummy's thinking of the third eye." I said, no, I think he's just thinking of what's the third step. And the amazing thing is that we had been warned that it could be an unpleasant time, the death, but he just was so peaceful. And there was a smile, and there was one huge breath that came out of him. And afterwards, my boy said, "I've heard 3 children in the world come into the world and take their first breaths. And now I've heard Roger, her dad, take his last breath. And that's the cycle of life, Mum, isn't it?" So I thought, even in that moment, even letting go of this thing that he absolutely adored, which was his life, he was teaching a lesson. He was giving an example. And everyone gathered again, and we sat with him lying there in this beautiful shroud that Katie had made. And Holly had also brought a branch of dogwood flowers, and we laid them on him. And after a while, the undertakers arrived. They were such young people. I grew up with Dickens. Undertakers are supposed to be, really horrible people. But no, they were young, and they were gentle, and they were kind. And so Holly wrapped him in a shroud, and we wheeled him out, and they put him into the back of a van. We were all standing there. And they shut the door, and I went, "Oh, my God, it's the Odyssey." Roger left us in a Honda Odyssey. Now, I don't believe in spirits and, magical things from heaven, but the idea that he would leave us for his final journey in the Odyssey was, and we'd all been there. All our children had been there. We'd all been on that boat. What didn't we laugh? We laughed so much. It was sort of suddenly made the whole thing joyous. So that was Saturday. On Monday, my boy Tim and I went to the crematorium, and we kissed the box that he was in, and we pushed the button. Because it was terribly important to me that at every moment of Roger's leaving, he needed to be watched over, and it needed to be shared. It couldn't just be done. And now he sits in a cupboard at home, and his ashes are going to be taken by the girls and his children to Argentina, to that place that we've seen so much of today, and so many of us know. And as he says, as we heard today, he wants on the plaque where the ashes are laid, "This was my heart's home." So that's where he will be. But he, of course, will be everywhere with all of us. So thank you.
Thank you, Lisa, for that powerful and wonderfully human account. We're going to end the symposium with another piece by Paul Song for Roger.